Rick, it's so good to see you.
Good morning, Keith. Always great to be with you on a Saturday morning.
Thanks. Looks like you got layers on there.
It took a turn for the worst up here. We're probably at low 40s today, and it's only going to be up to 60. It's been raining for a couple of days, so it's really my kind of weather.
Yeah, and it's perfect down here. We're having a beautiful day down here. So it's
Nice,
great. Well, let's
nice.
do a podcast. The title of this one is going to be Change is Inevitable.
Mm,
Suffering over change is optional.
mm.
Why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, well, I guess the way I would look at that topic would be first to understand that we always have a choice about how we handle change, and you can go kicking and screaming, and change just doesn't care. It's going to still do what it's going to do, and it is the only constant I think that we have in our lives. The fact is that everything that you see, everything that you've heard about, everything that exists will one day not, and that includes us. And I think that having the idea that whatever happens I can handle, or whatever happens I can control my attitude about my response, goes a long way to bringing inner peace to us and calmness and a stability in our lives that we otherwise might not have if we're all frenetic about trying to buck the change. Now, there are things you can change, obviously, and the key is figuring out. Part of the art of life is figuring out what you can change, what you can't. But the reality is, most of the things that happen out there who involve other people aren't changeable, aren't changeable. Only your role in it is. So I think that it's very important to realize that at the root of what we always talk about, we're the ones who are the cause of our suffering. If we look at change as something that's threatening and shouldn't happen and it's wrong and where's the justice and why me, that's an endless loop you'll get caught up in. It will bring you no satisfaction, a lot of heartache. If you take a look at, okay, this is where we're at right now, this is what happened, and these are my options, and I'm going to be taking each of these options as hard and as long as I can to get where I want to go. That's consistent with my core values. That brings stability and the calmness and the inner peace I think that we're all looking for.
Rick, I love that. As I reflect back on my childhood and the education, both formal in school and outside of school, I wish somebody would have set me down and it's like, yo, of all the things you're learning, how to add and do fractions and learning things about philosophy and science, I wish somebody said, let me give you one of the most important things you need to know. Life is constantly changing, and you want to work on being able to handle that change internally. Before we go on to long division, before we start quoting, what famous people have said and recounting history, get this down, Keith. Rick, that would have saved me a ton of suffering. I'm hoping I would have had the capacity to really grasp it.
Mm,
But man, one of the things that I'm aware of is that the minute that I remember that, oh, this is what happens. Life changes. Then there's a calmness and a peace about that happens when I have that awareness and I suffer. The minute that I find myself suffering, Rick, I've forgotten. I'm unconscious to the fact that life has changed. Whether it's like I was in this relationship and it was thriving forever. And then one day, you know, the love is gone. They've decided to move on. That's change. And my inability to handle that is that I have forgotten that life is full of change. Same thing happens in a job situation, whether you are, they come in, it's like, hey, listen, we appreciate the 30 plus years you poured your heart and soul into the company. You know what? We don't need you anymore. And by the way, the pension, there is no pension. That's another example of change. Like you want to be able to handle those things. Your resistance to handling it is what is causes the suffering. That part is completely optional. Change itself, as the title indicates, is inevitable. And the more and more I remember that, Rick, that change is inevitable, this is what is supposed to happen, then I'm aware that I also have a choice that I can choose to suffer over it, or I can choose to work with it. I can choose to see that this is an opportunity to work on myself, to raise the moment that's in front of me. And that has really, really served me well. And particularly at Mayo Clinic, my most peaceful days are the days in which I'm able to handle change. And my relationships and friendships, my most peaceful days are I'm able to handle that. Hey, this person is in a different mood than they were yesterday. And I just want to be the space to where they can be in whatever mood they choose to be in. And it's just really been a more peaceful experience in life when I remember that. You want to
Boy,
close it out?
that's really a beautiful thought, Keith. The idea that you can control that and realize that people aren't acting in a way that you don't like in order to hurt you, that has nothing to do with you. And so often what change involves are things that we, as I said before, have no control over, including the moods of your friends and your coworkers. But we often take on blame for that, or we often take on resentment or bitterness toward others. So I guess I would say one final thing, and that is the less time that we spend in analyzing why something happened and the injustice of it and how we're a victim and how it shouldn't happen, the less time we spend in there, and the more time we focus on accepting what has happened and then dealing with whatever your options are at that time, the better you're going to be. Last point, again, always remember, I have a hard time with this sometimes myself, depending on how hard the hit is or how big the obstacle. But you always, Rick, always, you have the option of reacting in a way that is consistent with how you want to be as a human being. And it doesn't mean analyzing, blaming, guilt, anxiety, all of that shit, pardon me, all of that stuff is going to be a problem for you if you don't get a handle on it. I have to remind myself because I'm so used to, reacting. It doesn't get you anywhere.
It does it, Rick. Thank you so much. I love you, Rick.
I love you, buddy. Take care.
Thank you.